I'm Tyrone, and I'd like to welcome you to this Festschrift in honor of Professor Alan Kazdin, who's the Sterling Professor of Psychology at Yale. The list of speakers here is a veritable pantheon, and it would put the plenary sessions at many international conferences to shame. The luminosity of our speaker panel is clearly a testament to our honoree, Dr. Alan Kazdin, whose productivity and impact are really unparalleled in our field, sort of once-in-a-generation caliber. But it's also a testament to the organizing prowess and persuasiveness of Professor Matt Nock, who really was the prime mover in putting this program together today. Before we get started, I also wanted to acknowledge a few other people who've contributed, including Lynn Butler, who's a staff member in the department who found this lovely setting for us for the meeting and organized the catering. Ava Casados, who is a PhD candidate in clinical psychology working with Alan, who created the lovely posters that you see around, including the one that shows Alan riding on a unicorn with something, lightning or what is it, rainbows, shining out of his hands. We'll want the backstory on that later. Molly Crossman, who's also a PhD candidate in psychology, who is helping with the audiovisual setup and also with the catering and just general organization of the program today. And then finally, I'd like to thank Frank Kyle, who's the chair of the Department of Psychology here at Yale, who was generous in contributing department resources to help us host this event. And Frank will be giving some remarks at the end of the day. So I suspect many of us have had this experience, arriving at the office early in the morning, no one else is around. You've got some question, it's pretty mundane, not too serious. Fire it off in an email to Alan. And before your cursor has a chance to get back to on your screen, Alan has delivered a response. And of course, there's nothing in the response that in any way bears on your question, but it has some witticism, perhaps even a limerick, that has you bent over, doubled over with laughter, right? And of course, you know, if anybody were around, which they aren't because it's so early, but if anybody were around and they walked by and they saw you in your office, they'd be scratching their head, you know, wondering about you. Perhaps even more worrisome is that you then spend the next 2 hours trying to craft a response to Alan that would do justice to how funny his was. And in the end, you find yourself in this ongoing series of comedic salvos that occupies you for really the rest of the day. And you tell yourself, you know, you justify this to yourself that, oh, well, this is way more interesting than the other work I had to do today. And indeed, Alan's appreciation for the absurd is as unparalleled as is his vita in sheer length. In fact, I've heard that Greenpeace has sued to put a moratorium on the printing of it, just out of concern for the environment. So I tried to capture this yin and yang of Alan in a tribute that I wrote to be read at the final Yale College faculty meeting this spring, which will thereby put it into the annals of Yale history. And I'll share those words with you here. This is actually written as though it were being spoken to Alan. Okay, so the first part is just who he is. Alan Kazdin got his undergraduate degree at San Jose State University, his PhD at Northwestern, a faculty member at Yale since 1989. You have defined what it means to be an academically oriented clinical psychologist, not only for legions of graduate students and faculty colleagues at Yale, but for the field overall. You've done so by your example, by thinking critically and creatively about the causes of and treatments for behavioral disorders in children, by pursuing a rigorous scientific approach throughout your career, and by taking numerous leadership roles, including director of the Yale Child Study Center, chair of the Yale Department of Psychology, and president of the American Psychological Association. You've been recognized by your peers with major awards, including the Outstanding Lifetime Achievement Award from the American Psychological Association and the James McKean Cattell Award from the American Psychological Society. Your passion and effectiveness as a teacher and mentor are clearly echoed in the dozens of former graduate students, postdocs, and trainees who are now in leadership roles at major universities and organizations throughout the world. Your signature graduate level course, Research Methods in Clinical Psychology, was widely viewed as one of the most engaging and challenging by generations of students. In considering the methodological requirements for strong inference in clinical psychology, you literally wrote the book, now in its 7th edition. With over 750 publications, including, I'm told, now 50 books as of yesterday, you have set a record of productivity that is as likely to be surpassed as it is for the same person to be struck by lightning twice. And I looked this up in the back of his text. We calculated the odds at 1 in 9 million. So we'll be waiting around quite a while for that. But as acclaimed as you are, you never lost your sense of modesty and humor, applying your keen wit to observe the absurd at any and possibly every opportunity. It seems that you took to heart the words of Francis Bacon: imagination was given to man to compensate him for what he is not, a sense of humor to console him for what he is. It is often said of people who become clinical psychologists that they have a strong personal connection to their chosen area of inquiry. Given your focus on the treatment of aggressive and antisocial behavior in children, one might therefore surmise that you were perhaps obstreperous as a child. Yet, an online survey completed by those familiar with your childhood, including many of the people in this room, revealed exactly the opposite. In fact, Kazdin was a very good boy. One thing is for certain, you retained your impish charm throughout it all. Alan, it has been an honor and a pleasure to have you as a colleague. With that, I'd like to acknowledge and welcome to the podium Matt Nock, the organizer of today's program, as our first speaker. Thank you all.